Today, we are going to an island that looks like a cute island from afar, but where people are being burned alive and cruel experiments are being carried out on sound people for the purpose of curing the insane. The island of Poveglia, located in Italy with its Mediterranean climate, millions of tourists it hosts every year, nightlife, music and cute houses, actually resembles a beautiful holiday resort from afar. When a person sees this island from afar, he gets the feeling of a very nice holiday is made on this island. But the other name of this lovely island is Plague Island. About 160,000 people caught in the plague between 1793 and 1814 have been quarantined on the island of Plague, Italy. You will get more terrible feelings than the scariest movie you have ever watched or a thriller novel that makes you shudder even while turning its pages. The mass graves still found on the Plague Island, although undesirable, add an air of tension to the island. It is said that there are very strange energies here. The Plague Island actually covers a small area. In the Plague Island of Poveglia, which had a very frightening history, where it was hard to tell in words, things were actually going very well. However, tourists and merchants who came to this island by ship from Europe also caused a plague epidemic to come here. The plague has grown to a very serious extent, and the entire island has been quarantined. At that time, all the patients in the surrounding cities and countries that had plague were sent here, and the island literally became a horror movie set. Because there was no cure for plague at that time. Since there was no cure or medication, everyone had to wait for death. In order for you to be brought to the Plague Island, you didn't need to show any clear symptoms either. A fear had surrounded all of humanity, just as it is these days. Any elderly, women and children suspected of being sick were sent to this island regardless of whether they were sick or not and left for dead. People seemed to be left to die in a dungeon. Nobody had anywhere to run. Everyone waited desperately for death on this island. About 160,000 plague patients are waiting for death on this island, and also mental patients have been added to them. Mental patients in Italy and in surrounding countries also began to be sent to this island. On the island, both plague patients and mental patients shared the same fate. And what is done to the patients brought to the island is much scarier than the whole scenarios. According to the information contained in written sources, since there was no advanced medicine, knowledgeable doctors and endless medicine options at that time, people with plague were burned en masse in a large fire. To prevent this recurring disease, cremation has continued for many years, with those caught in the plague being repatriated to this island. The burning of the island's 160,000 people alive, unfortunately, did not bring an end to the plague. After 160,000 plague patients who were brutally slaughtered, a plague epidemic was also observed in thousands of people living outside the island at that time. In this case, as a precaution, plague doctors were assigned to take care of only patients with plague. Today, just like the health workers who took care of the coronavirus patients in the pandemic hospitals, plague doctors took part in this hellfire. Just as doctors involved in the fight against the coronavirus are dressed today, many years ago, special and somewhat scary-looking clothes were designed that duty doctors working on the Plague Island should wear to protect themselves from the plague. It is alleged that these doctors, who were treating the plague at the time, wore beak-shaped masks with fine scent on the tips. The reason for this smell thing is so different. Can you guess why these beaked costumes are spreading a nice smell around? Yeah, that's because the doctors thought that in those years, they could beat the plague with a good smell. But another claim was that the plague corpses, found all over the island, were spreading unbearable scent. When the doctors on the island of Plague found it difficult to tolerate these smells, the designers added a fragrance section to the beak section of the costumes. By smelling these beautiful smells instead of corpse smells, the doctors were able to continue their work and not move their minds. The doctors did not lose their minds, but this plague island was also used as a mental hospital in those years, and many patients who lost their minds were brought to the same environment as patients with the plague. There's another thing that's even scarier. A mental hospital was built on Plague Island in 1992. The doctors working at the mental hospital committed terrible tortures on the patients, causing the death of the patients. Unfortunately, it is also confirmed by powerful sources that a doctor on the island of Poveglia, who converted to a mental hospital in 1992, was experimenting with a form of torture, in the name of treating all mentally ill people. A doctor who conducts an experiment called lobotomy on mentally ill patients takes out the part located in the frontal lobe of psychological patients' brains. The surgical treatment that took place turned into torture rather than treatment, causing many people to die. It is said that the murderous doctor conducted his experiments in a bell tower located on the island. Another claim is that the doctor, who had been conducting these brutal experiments on the mentally ill for years, was completely out of his mind as he began to see the ghosts of the patients he had killed. And one day, he went up to the bell tower, and mysteriously fell and died. According to the autopsy findings, it wasn't the fall from the bell tower that killed him. The possibility that a cloud of mist would drown him after he fell is among the rumors of this mysterious island. But the scarier part is that other doctors who witnessed this incident believe that it was the ghosts of deceased patients who killed him. The police of that period found the body of the doctor who fell from the bell tower in Burns. According to the doctor's autopsy, it is still not known exactly how he died. Italian fishermen don't even fish near Plague Island these days. The impact of the strange events that have taken place on the island for decades has reached to the present day. The island is so clear, so desolate and so horrible that no one dares go, because there's still bone residue left over from the bodies on the island. How convincing this place is debatable. Those who have dared to visit the island in recent years have heard voices on the island saying, "Go and never come back." Also, the same people were hearing bells on the island, even though there was no one in the bell tower. In Italy in 2014, Italians opposed the sale of the island of Plague, which the government auctioned on the internet to raise revenue for the state coffers. The local people did not want this island to be turned into a luxury resort. The people of the island even considered raising money to keep the Plague Island from being sold, and buying the island for themselves. Would you like to go to this island and wander around for a few days?